Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome again to continue the last session. It's my privilege to introduce today's guests on a very special program. Dr. Ambedkar International Center is a policy think tank, and we keep doing work on different areas. The basic mandate of the center is socio-economic transformation. We are working beyond boundaries, irrespective of caste, locality, gender, anything else. We are working for the betterment of humanity. We are working specially for the section of society which is deprived. So it was actually the dream of Dr. Ambedkar, and I am very happy to have women filmmakers, documentary makers, producers, directors here. Because it is something which was the dream of Dr. Ambedkar also. You can think of 50s, 60s, even 30s before independence, 30s and 40s, when women were not enjoying rights. Half the generation of this country was feeling depressed, oppressed, and it was actually. It was Dr. Ambedkar who came forward. There was one figure, the one source of light in the storm that never felt defeated. And he was the one who paid a lot of attention to media. And there was a valid reason, because media is something which empowers people. It is the voice of the voiceless. That's why he started his own newspaper. The first newspaper was the Mook Nayak, the voice of the voiceless. So there is a long list of what he did for this nation, for the citizens of this nation, for the betterment of this nation, and for socio-economic transformation of this nation. On the occasion of the Women's Day, International Women's Day, DAIC has decided to organize a series of programs. And in the same series, we have invited the distinguished filmmakers, producers, directors here today for sharing their experience and for inspiring the coming generation, and for, of course, throwing light on what Dr. Ambedkar was having in their mind when he used to talk about the women empowerment. So let me introduce the first distinguished panelist of this afternoon. She is Anandana Kapoor. She is an award-winning filmmaker and co-founder of Cinemad India, previously an executive producer for notification program on televisions. She has worked for information and video campaign for UNICEF and other organizations, and her films have received critical acclaiming globally and are taught in courses on gender issues. Her films are also included in the courses of social development and innovations. Ananda Madam also teaches courses on documentaries and practice and researching media and culture. Her writings on cinema and popular culture have been published in anthologies and journals. So she is widely published also. Ananda is also a recipient of the Fulbright Nehru Fellowship and Shastri India Canadian Institute Fellowship for her work on interactive documentary practices. So I request the director to felicitate Ananda ma'am, and Vidushi with us all. Thank you, ma'am, for being with us today as a panelist. The second distinguished speaker is Sehjo Singh. So I again request the director to felicitate Sajo ma'am. I request Vidushi to felicitate her with us all. Friends, Sajo Singh is an independent documentary maker who deals with a very wide range of developmental issues in almost all parts of Indian subcontinent. She has made films that won national and international award, and they are critically acclaimed. She has also served as the director of program and policy at Action Aid India and oversaw programs and policy advocacy with the oversight of team supporting 300 partnership with community-based organizations. Her last preoccupation has been setting up worker-owned campaign in Ethiopia, workers-owned companies in Ethiopia in the cotton value chain. So she is a distinguished filmmaker, not only in India, but she is also working in abroad also. Let us have a round of applause for her. The third distinguished panelist for today is Priya Thuvasri. I'll again request director to come on dais and to felicitate Priya ma'am. With you see, please felicitate ma'am with this all. Priya ma'am is an independent documentary filmmaker and television producer based in New Delhi. Her body of work has focused on women and gender. Her stories windows into myriad experience of the body, the environment, the community, mapped from gender and feminist perspective. Priya has been directing, producing, and editing documentary films and television programs for New Delhi television channels. Fox Traveler, CNA, National Human Rights Commission of India, Film Division of India, Public Service Broadcasting Trust, and Khabar Lahariya for over a decade now. She is having a wide range of experience in different fields. Let us have another loud round of applause for her. Our next speaker and the series, next panelist in the series is Anupama Srinivasan. Request director to come on dais again and please felicitate ma'am. Vidushi, please felicitate her with this all. Friends, Anupama ma'am is a freelance filmmaker based in New Delhi, India. She is an alumni of Harvard University and FTII Pune. She has been making documentaries for over 20 years, past 20 years, often shooting and editing her own work. Her films have been screened at various film festivals, including 100 Years of Cinema Centenary Festival, Yamagata International Documentary Film Festival, FIPA, Biarj MIFF, and Peloponnes International Festival, Kono Otok Isola. Imagine India. Imagine India is a well-known platform, so I'm happy to read it that her films have also been screened at these platforms. Imagine India Marriott and Kara film festivals. So she is a widely known, a widely published and widely appreciated filmmaker. So I welcome Anupa ma'am and request you to have a round of applause for her also. And the fifth distinguished panelist today is Natasha Badawar. So I request again director to please come on the dais and come on the stage and felicitate Natasha ma'am. Friends, Natasha ma'am is also an independent filmmaker, author, columnist, and media trainer. She is a postgraduate in mass communication from Jamia Millia Islamia University, and she started her career as one of India's first women camera persons in new television. She has worked with NDTV for 13 years and resigned as vice president, training and development. Natasha ma'am led the media team at Karwae Mohabbat, a people's campaign devoted to the universal values of the Constitution, equality, freedom, justice, and compassion. She makes she makes popular short films that reflect the values of solidarity, in interfaith harmony, and the need to heal our fractured society. This was actually the dream of Dr. Ambedkar, because this society having a sort of fractured mandate, fractured harmony, and these filmmakers, I'm happy that all women filmmakers, they have done a lot of work, and a dream which our Dr. Ambedkar saw is coming true now. The women are empowered. They are participating in each and every field. Of course, they were capable, which we were discussing yesterday also. They were capable, but they were not getting chance, right opportunity. And since independence, because this is something which is constitutional now, they are getting all rights, and now they are proving their ability, their intellectual ability, and doing a lot of things for the society, sometimes better than man can do. Thank you very much, ma'am, all the panelists for being with us. And now over to Vidushi. Thank you very much.
I would like to welcome everyone here. And Baba Sahib Ambedkar once said that I measure the progress of a community by the degree of progress which women have achieved. International Women's Day is a global day of celebrating the social, economic, cultural, political achievements of women. The day also marks a call to action of accelerating gender parity. DIC believes that International Women's Day is a time to reflect on the progress made, to call for change, and to celebrate acts of courage and determination by ordinary women who have played an extraordinary role in the history of their countries and communities. The world has made unprecedented advances, but no country has achieved gender equality so far. In ancient India, women enjoyed very high positions, but gradually their position degenerated into merely objects of pleasure meant to serve certain purpose. They lost their individual identities and even their basic human rights. For Indian women movement, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar provides a powerful source of inspiration to formulate a feminist political agenda which simultaneously addresses the issue of class, caste and gender in contemporary socio-political setup, which still keeps conservative reactionary values in many respects, particularly on gender relations. Dr. Ambedkar saw women as victims of oppressive caste-based and rigid hierarchical society system, which is why he wanted women to have higher participation in all walks of life. Even as a legislator under the colonial regime, Dr. Ambedkar was one of the first activists to root for the rights of working women. At each step, Dr. Ambedkar challenged the deep rooted patriarchal foundation of Indian society and helped in drafting a constitution which has stood and test of time. I would like to emphasize that in keeping with the spirit of Dr. Ambedkar's vision, DAIC believes that women have the power to create, nurture, and transform, and that women are the engines of enriching society. Today's discussion is dedicated to the contribution of Dr. Ambedkar on women empowerment and honoring the achievement of women by identifying, celebrating and increasing visibility of women's achievement that can help forge equality and to celebrate women-led development initiatives. Thank you. I would like to welcome all the panelists here. For I would request all of you to please say something about yourself and the work that you have been doing so far on gender and in general that your portfolio, ma'am. Thank you.
A very good afternoon to everybody. Thank you so much, the director, Vidushi, and this is a rocking panel. I have seen work by a lot of the people here, and it's very exciting to be with women filmmakers. I think more than my body of work, I want to say that being a documentary filmmaker has meant finding women in leadership positions. And that is the beauty of the genre. It's a very difficult road. There are few compared to male counterparts, but the fact is that everybody who's telling a story, particularly from the non-fiction space, has a lot of conviction, and they put in several years of hard work to get you the stories that matter. So I think in that sense, for me, I have found not just lifelong friends, but also people I can look up to. At the same time, I think in terms of my own work, I'm somebody who is not just trying to look at the stories of the everyday, because I think the everyday is rich. There's a lot of humor. And I think if we can laugh, then maybe we can reform. Finally, I think for me, the tectonic shift now is, of course, mobile phone filmmaking and artificial intelligence, and trying to see how these techniques of storytelling will change how we define what creativity is and who does what. And again, there are fewer women in tech as well. So I think these questions become important, and I'm happy to be here, and telling a woman's story, I think, is a no-brainer. Your grandmothers have told you stories. Those are her stories. So I think that's what's important.
Very honored to be here with all of you and stunned by the presence of this beautiful center in Delhi. And to begin, I wish you the best in creating the most important questions and prospering the work of Dr. Ambedkar, because of which the people who are here in front of you are sitting here. With of course, the onset of the new technology, there are so many filmmakers, because anybody who can make a film on a phone is a filmmaker, and there is a dissolution of hierarchy, at least, if not in the society. The Varna Vyavastha of filmmaking has been smashed by the telephone. And hopefully, in your next panel, we'll have some Dalit filmmakers, which is still a paucity. There are hardly any Dalit writers, women writers. You go and find them, you will probably find them in Maharashtra or in Tamil Nadu, where there has been a Dalit movement, but you will not find them in the Hindi heartland. There are no Dalit filmmakers that I know of, but probably with Khabar Lahariya, I have already seen the work of Dalit women in the festival, which was done by Kriti and Sangat recently. So yes, so the mobile phone has been a smashing of hierarchies even in filmmaking. And I'm very proud that I was one of the earliest women filmmakers, and have been working with various movements across the country. And hopefully our work continues. And of course, we are in very difficult times, masks and all, plus also the state of the economy. And we know that the state of economy crushes those who are already crushed. So as we sit here, there will be millions of families which do not have enough to eat, right? There will be many more mothers who lactating and mothers who will be undernourished because they have no support. Whatever support they had has been taken away. So as we sit here, let us have those people in our thoughts, right? This is all I want to say, because that's all what our all concerns are. Thank you.
Thank you for leading that. In fact, I'm planning to show one film which Khaballeria women are making. So we'll definitely talk about that and why we wanted to make that film. When I started off, I didn't want to be a women filmmaker. I thought I'll be a filmmaker. In Jamia, when I was studying, it was a batch of 50. And to be honest, it was like just 13 men, and women were in a majority. And I never felt a need of having this claim of a women filmmaker at that point of time. But the reality hit me once I got into the field, because I started seeing, when it comes to technicians, when it came to a crew, like the number and that percentage difference is really stark. And I clearly remember, like, though my films were very close to gender and women crew mainly being part of the projects, it was not deliberate. But by the third film, I was very clear that, this is not just a simple thing, and it became a politics for me. And it became so deliberate attempt that, that I want women crew in my team, because there is no lack of talent out there, but it's just people who have that power to make a team is not making that decision. And I think now we are going through a beautiful period, this panel, and we claiming, let it be IWCC, Women Cinematographers Collective, that was made actually because women cinematographers were not getting that kind of recognition, or IWC, which started in Kerala. I think we are in a very different time and phase where that change is happening, and very glad to be part of that change.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Vidushi, for doing this. I'm actually feeling extremely moved sitting here with, all the women filmmakers here with every name, and underneath that says documentary filmmaker. And sometimes, I feel very proud of being part of this group, actually, and extremely moved because I actually haven't seen a panel in which everybody has documentary filmmaker written under them. So, and I think the role that documentaries can play in any country and in any time is crucial, and especially in today's world and where our country is today. I think we have to take our roles very, very seriously, because we are in a way documenting what's happening with men, women, of people of all genders, and I think that's an immense privilege and responsibility. And like Priya was saying, when we always in the beginning, we don't want to put that label of women filmmaker, and soon we realize the value of it and the importance of asserting that identity. And I also want to say that, the women sitting here are all, I think, we'll all acknowledge our extreme privilege in terms of caste, class, education, opportunities. And I think the real challenge will come when we can open these kind of forums out to people who don't have access to that camera and to those means of telling their own stories. And I think once you have that access, then you're already empowered. And so, in a sense, we are all empowered women who found our voice, who have pushed our way into various forums and been able to express ourselves. So I think that's really the challenge to open the spaces up even more. And having said that, I'm really keen to take forward the discussion. There are some very exciting questions that Vidushi's planned, so moving right along.
Thank you. I'd like to echo exactly what everyone else is saying. It was such a surprise and a refreshing surprise to receive this invite. I checked and rechecked. All right, there's a Ministry of Social Justice that has seen our work or is aware, is keen to interact with the kind of work we do, because when you've been an independent filmmaker out there, you can often feel very anonymous, and you can often not really, you don't always get to see the impact of your work or interact with an audience. So it made me feel very seen. It made my work, our work as a team be seen. I was thinking of my story on the way here. I had no idea how Vidushi was going to lead this, and I thought at least brush up on who you are. and I want to share that the experience of having when I came out of Jamia as a filmmaker, when I went into a mass communication institute, we still didn't know very much about what mass communication meant. We just knew that it was something very new and something very, you got jobs. You got jobs with the UN if you were lucky. But there were no delusions by the time we came out. But my batch was very lucky. Private television was starting in the mid-90s. And almost all of us got really well-paying jobs. And we were part of the first burst of private news in India, working with Pranoy Roy and Vinod Dua, and the beginning of Aaj Tak and NDTV, the channels, the 24/7 channels started at that time. And over the years, one got an idea of how far your idealism can go in the mainstream space. One got an idea of what happens when the constraints of having to create content because in a situation where advertisers pay for it, what happens to what you wanted to make and what you ended up making? What is it that you're compelled to do? What is it that you're compelled to begin to ignore? All of that happened in those 13 years that I spent at NDTV. And one by one, many people quit mainstream and became independent journalists. And I now look back and think I was one of the first to kind of get off that boat, not knowing the world of independent filmmaking. But when you have stories to tell and you feel frustrated about not being able to tell them, you find that your own subconscious, your unconscious leads you. It creates pathways. You find ways and audiences, and of course the advent of social media is another breakthrough. Just like the smartphone makes it possible for anyone to find a way to tell their story and make it reach audiences, so also social media as a platform makes it possible. And after a 10-year gap, I joined this campaign called the Karwan-e-Mohabbat, started by Harsh Mandar, and found a place where all my media skills, my media experience, and my aspirations to tell honest stories, to create a space for the stories that mainstream media no longer had a space for, could to some extent be fulfilled. And it's been a really amazing journey because there are so many people who have joined us, even though small projects like these have very little funding. They cannot pay you like mainstream media can. But the best talent wants to work in these spaces. And that reassures you that there is a generation of filmmakers, and some of them are here, part of my team are here, who are still looking for honest, refreshing spaces where they can learn to tell their stories and the stories of other people that need to be told. That's been my journey, and I'm very, very lucky and happy that I'm here to be able to tell it and to share it. Thank you.
Another question that I would like to ask all of you: what made you decide that you wanted to be filmmakers? Like, because when I was a kid, or when we are young, we are parents, or at that particular time we were never told that you should become a filmmaker. We are always told, you will be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer. What made you decide that you wanted to enroll into a mass communication course, or you wanted to go to FTII, or that you wanted to get into filmmaking?
So, frankly speaking, I was an activist first, and I was doing my political science in Delhi University and carrying on. So I was, after school, joined the People's Union for Civil Liberties. And so in my mind, that was my career, right? And whatever came along, so I gave it a big hard thought that what will allow me to continue my vocation would be either teaching or journalism, right? And so then Jamia happened. It was such a lucky break for a lot of us. So we were, I remember when we discovered it, we ran because we were late already by 2 days. And we ran to that little office, you know, you guys haven't seen it, but we were in the smallest possible spaces. We were housed there. And we, of course, we had this vision of Jamal Kidwai, right? He spotted the people, and it's no coincidence the kind of people that have come out of Jamia are here. I mean, of course, FTI, if we were in Pune, there would be, or Bombay, there would be FTII. But it's not a coincidence that I meet a lot of people from Jamia in these kind of spaces where things are being changed and challenged. And that is to the vision of Jamal Kidwai, who was very much aligned with the vision of Jamia itself when it was established during the independence. And the vision of Dr. Ambedkar is to spot people, because how will change happen? Change will not happen with people who have already got established interests, right? Change will only happen with people who have the wherewithal. I mean, if we are not from a background which allows us freedom to study, right? Or freedom to learn skills, or freedom to have that, what we call the extended childhood, right? We still don't have to look after ourselves till we are 23, 24, or even older. And so he spotted the people among us, and he specifically chose women. That's also not a coincidence. He believed that women will bring in far greater and long-term changes. And it is logical. Come to think of it, what is caste based on? Caste is based on patriarchy. Correct? Right? And that's why in today's papers, you have this man walking to a police station with the head of his daughter. All of you noted it, right? What was her fault? That she chose to love someone, right? Who her father did not approve of. And he felt that it was his duty. And he felt in his righteous anger that he was doing all of us in the society a favor, right? And therefore, the point of having women filmmakers is the same. Please connect the dots. The woman who exercised her freedom to love, or women like us who have exercised our freedom to choose education and many other choices, which many of people, you know, who are patriarchs will not approve of. Definitely not, right? But if it were not for the vision like people who have set up these institutions, and sadly many such institutions are under threat, right? It is those institutions that have given to you or given to us, people like us, right? So I would say that, you know, I would say that is the core point of the journeys. And so we've been, people who are here are activists first, and then I'm sure, you know, if suppose we did not have Jamia, if suppose we were in Indore or Meerut or Baghpat, right? But we still had this spark. We would be writing poetry. We would be doing theater. Yeah? So it is how we are oriented. It is very important, Director Sir, to take on people who are young. So even if you have scholars, you please make an effort to get on people who are young, because they are the ones who are going to take to the future, the vision of change, through filmmaking, through poetry, through theater, through literature, through anything else. Thank you.
Yeah, I can. How did I become a filmmaker? It was just coincidence. I think Kerala, coming from Kerala, that also played quite a role. I remember after schooling, I just know I didn't want to do this. I didn't know what to do. and Masscom just came its way. And then the film festival world of in Kerala, the Kerala Film Festival, which is quite popular, I was part of it, and I still remember I used to get goosebumps watching films. And then that feeling of being in a dark room and watching a movie on a big screen, really, that was the spirit. There was nobody from my family from this background, so there was a lot of places where I have been asked by family and relatives that, do you want to go back to medicine? Do you want to go back to engineering? But I was enjoying that flow. It just happened one after the other. Like then Jamia, I still remember the first time when we were asked to put that film roll into that Bolex camera. I had the same goosebumps. And what keeps me still going is that each time when I come across a story, to hear that story, be part of it, and then that feeling that I want to share the story to the world outside, that is still there, that urge, and I think, I still get goosebumps. So, so that keeps me going.
Well, I also grew up in Kerala actually, and was dragged to film festivals from the age of 6 and 7, and in like 10 different languages. So yeah, very much a part of why one gets attracted to films. I think that crazy Kerala film culture. So initially, just like everybody else, we watch a lot of Bollywood and commercial cinema and get so fascinated by what it can do actually. And so I was only interested in fiction films actually. And then when I went to FTI, much to the surprise of my family, because I was very good academically. I had done my bachelor's in maths. And I still love maths. So they were like, okay, from maths, you want to be a filmmaker, you want to go to FTI and all that. But after finishing this 3-year intensive course in fiction, I was back in Delhi wondering what to do with my life. And I was like, I just sort of drifted into documentaries then, because I just felt like I didn't know enough about the world. And this was a way which would take me out of my comfort zone, take me into spaces that normally I wouldn't go at all, meet people I wouldn't. So just that was my impetus to get into documentaries. And with the camera, one felt like you were going into spaces and you had a reason to, So, and then people would also open their doors. All kinds of doors opened when you just said, oh, I'm here to make a film, or I want to do research. And that was the most exciting part, to do documentaries as opposed to what I was trained for, actually. And also, I think the biggest thing for me was the creative independence that immediately one got after finishing a course. So I didn't have to do 10 years of assisting and then finally, get a film to make or something. So like within 6 months, I wrote a proposal to PSBT and I'd already made a film. So one immediately had a voice to tell your own story, to tell it the way you wanted to. And slowly, I then started becoming more greedy. And I was like, no, I want to do my own camera, and I want to do my own editing. And even though technically I was not trained or skilled, I was like, I want to do it, because in a documentary situation, that's the most fun part, is to be behind the camera and to actually experience life unfolding in front of you. And I didn't want to miss that. And so that's what allowed, so the documentary gave you that freedom. The budgets weren't that big. One could get that money together and say exactly what you wanted to say the way you wanted to say it. And there are very few people who have the privilege of doing that. So, and that's why for 20 years I've stuck to that. Yeah.
I studied psychology before I came to Jamia. And I was on my path. I wanted to be a psychologist when I was in school. And unlike some of you academically inclined people, I knew I'm not going to be able to do that MBBS to become the psychiatrist that I want to be, so I have to get good marks and get into psychology honors. But Delhi University broke my heart, and I realized that this is not really going to be the kind of rigorous training that I'm looking for. And like Sergio mentioned, I was drawn to activism. I joined the Narmada Bachao Andolan, and I went to Jabua, and I said, no, studies is not for me. I'm just going to work on the ground. And then you discovered how difficult it is to, to let go of your privilege, how difficult it is to learn at that age what caste is, because it's the first time you have left your Delhi home and gone to a village where everyone is asking you, "Kaun jaat ho?" before they ask you even your name. And you realize, wow, there's an India you want to work in, but you don't even know anything about that India. And I took the entrance exam on a whim just to see if I can still write, because it's got these 6 essays you have to write in the entrance exam. And I said, oh, well, I like to do this, and I'll. Jamal Kidwai spotted me, to be honest. Because I had come back from a tribal village to take my interview, and I was full, with the flush of inspiration, and knowing very much that I don't want to be part of the city life. I want to go and be part of something much larger than the life that I have lived. And of course, filmmaking became that doorway. It became that place where I could even get what I had left behind in psychology. You could connect with people. You could listen to their stories. You could find out what is it that is common across religions, gender, caste, class. Ultimately, that individual and this individual. And it's a constant surprise. Every time we're on the field, every time we meet one more person, we go there thinking, I am I, and this is a very different person. And there is one stage, either during the filming or the editing, when you discover this is a mother just like me, this is a daughter just like me, this is a father just like my own father. And that's what this medium gives you. It gives you the excuse to connect with people and then make bigger connections between the audience and the story that you have found.
It's on now. Thank you. Actually, as far as my story is concerned, I was a student of literature. And I was quite comfortable because, I remember reading something by an author, an Indian author, where she said, feminism gave me the vocabulary of dissent. And it sat very well with me. There were so many questions that I had, so many things that didn't seem right about what women can do or not do, what prescriptions we have around ourselves. And so somewhere, I already felt like I would be dissenting, and I would continue to do that. But when one came into the mass communication program, I found that the documentary genre was in many ways more democratic than the other. It was not as feudal. There was no star system. You went in and you were humbled every day if you decided to listen carefully. And I think increasingly for me, it also became a question of enjoying the people I work with. A lot of my crew are young men who have run away from the villages wanting to become movie stars, or people who have wanted to escape the difficulties of life in villages in India. They've probably seen electricity for the first time when they came to the cities. And yet, when they are on set, their acumen, their ability to frame, to light up a scene is phenomenal. And it tells you that there is a very false hierarchy when it comes to what is wisdom, what is intelligence, and who has the capacity to tell a story. And I think if we are able to break that entitlement in every little gesture that we have, then we're doing something right. And for me, I think the people that I work with are the reason that I find the stories and the confidence that I find to tell the stories that I do. So filmmaking was organic. I do have a father who's fond of photography and is a film buff. You ask him about any film of his era and he'll tell you who romanced whom and who made which film. And so there's been a culture of generally enjoying films. So in that sense, I think it was not an anomaly when I actually quit engineering to take up filmmaking. My grandfather, who was an engineer, didn't speak to me for a while. He was shocked. And for a long time, people would keep telling me, are you invited to weddings to film? And that time it was pejorative. Today it's the thing. You know, everybody's very proud when their son and daughter, you know, is filming somebody. So I've really seen that shift where people look down upon you. I've had people tell me, I'm so sorry you couldn't make it in life. And it's been fascinating because the independent filmmaker and a woman filmmaker is still lower in the pecking order. We don't command power in that sense, but trust me, we're chipping at power every day, and that's the exciting part. So maybe I think that is what drew me to filmmaking and keeps me there. Yeah. Thank you.
Continuing to that, ma'am, I would like to ask, what is the biggest challenge that you have faced as a woman filmmaker? Like, you know, and especially when you are shooting women, when you are documenting women only, are there any specific challenge that you feel that it is just you have faced that because you're a woman filmmaker?
Well, I think one could say a blanket yes to that. Sometimes it's also having to contest the crew. Like the people I now work with, I think are men who are feminists, are people of various genders. And we have a sense of synergy about what we know is justice and what is right. But when I started out, it would be difficult to direct a camera person and say, this is what I would like, because they had decided that, you know, you were a chit of a girl and who are you to say? Or when I was, you know, an executive producer for TV, I had 60 to 100 people that I needed to direct. And yet there would be resistance because I was a woman. And those are the times when you really have to take a decision. There's also this set way in which you want to frame women. So you will automatically find that, you know, they are being framed in a particular way. So a lot of the politics for me also on set is to speak to the cinematographers that I'm working with and saying, this is not how they need to be framed, or can we do this differently? Or you're stereotyping them. A woman who's happy does not have to look like this. There can be moments of quiet, there can be moments of hysteria, whatever it is, let the person dictate it, not you dictate that. For me, I think one of the most recent interventions was when I was filming in Bihar, and there were these two young girls, 12 and 14 years of age, who decided to speak with me because I was a woman. And they were curious about the camera, and they spoke about childhood and what they felt as young girls. And I had left my phone number with them, which I usually do when I film with women because I want to give them the space to reach out if they reconsider, because there's so much patriarchal pressure. And by the time I had started shooting some 65 kilometers away, I got a call from them the next morning saying, you have to come back. We are being shamed because we spoke in front of the camera. And I canceled my schedule and we went back. We spoke to the village head person. I spoke to every male member. It was almost like, you know, a public hearing, and explained to them that the girls have a right to speak and that they were saying what was important and how this can impact their lives. And I think those kind of mediations have now become part of my process. Initially, they would, you know, perhaps be extra initiative, but now when I go into a space, I build in time for that. So I think for me, the challenge is that. And of course, when you go to remote places or places where they're not used to seeing a woman in charge, you will be challenged. You have to watch out for your body. I've had assistant directors who've been pinched and molested on set if they are, you know, and you have to really push back. You have to make sure that you command your presence. So it's not easy being physically present, being intellectually present. But the thing is, you have to own it and you have to push back. So I mean, what does it mean to be a woman? You carry the same thing into the set as well, but then you have to find your battles and find your processes. Yeah.
I think I can go on and on. I think becoming a filmmaker from the activist mold, you grow up thinking that anybody who's right in their mind is a feminist and is anti-caste, because it's so logical, looks so correct, yeah? And then you later on find out that there is a huge, huge body of culture weighted against you, and tradition and establishment and all that. Anyway, so I think to my defense, I started out as fiercely independent, right? So when you are independent, you already are not part of any other structure. So there is no boss, there is no production house who can dictate what you're doing to do. So you just go out and that's who you are. And the second thing which I think helped me is to be oblivious of the fact that other people are viewing me differently. Yeah? So I'll just recount a very quick incident which would be interesting. Is I was 26, 27, very young. and not overtly fond of being well dressed. Yeah, and so I do not show the privilege that I have, right? Except for the fair skin that I cannot avoid. I cannot carry my privilege with me when I'm negotiating with other privileges, right? With higher caste people, with officers, etc. So I went to Chhattisgarh to make a film on a literacy campaign, armed with just a letter from the department. And to top it all, I had a little baby in my arms. Yeah? So an underdressed young woman with a baby in her arms goes and shakes hands of the collector. Yeah? So the collector is looking for someone else. Probably I'm wife of the filmmaker or whatever, but there's no one there. Right? So and I did not do it consciously. You know, and I discovered that this was not perceived properly much later. After the collector provided for everything, he gave me 2 people to work with him. We went to various places, we shot, we finished, we came back with very difficult circumstances because it was very remote. That is the place of Shankar Guha Niyogi. Yeah? And we finished and came back. And after the film was finished, I received a stinker, a letter written by 2 people who the collector had assigned to me, thinking that I will outsource the film to them and I'll go and take care of my baby. And since I didn't do that, they wrote me and I didn't know what had happened. And later on, as I processed this, I said, okay, great that I was oblivious to this entire thing while it happened. And so that is how I've continued. But yes, there are situations, especially in structures, large structures, when the fact that people are not used to being having a woman. And in that place, you really have to have some people who are next to you in command. So I was, in my time, we used to have large crews because I was shooting on film. So there were this 12 people with me in the van in 1993. And we were in remote jungles in Jharkhand. And we had a little bus kind of thing. And then we would get out and, we set up all kinds of, because film equipment was very clumsy those days. And then people would come and say, who is your master? And they would point to me. कि हमको पैसे ये देती है. And that settled it. Yeah. So you need few people who believe in you and can set, and it's good if they are men.
Yeah. Like I resonate with most of the things which are shared here. Luckily, I will say I am one of those privileged people who had like less challenges when compared to my counterparts. But what kind of challenges we do face? For example, a very recent experience, I got commissioned for an international documentary project. And when I sent the camera crew list, there were like 2 women and 2 men. And this foreign agency said that, let's go with the men. I asked why. So they said, like, ma'am, the schedule is very tight. It's just 3 days. You will have a lot of running around. And we think men will be better. And finally, I had to take up that challenge. I said that, these are women I had worked with and I am very confident about them. Give them a chance. And then you have 3 episodes. Let me do 1 episode with them. If you're not happy with that, with their talent, then maybe we can take up your thing. And sometimes we have to force, and that's when we see these numbers, like, for example, last year, there were 144 Bollywood films, 122 Bollywood films, and out of which only 14 were done by women. It's not that there is a lack of talent there or lack of stories from women out there. It's just because of these kind of barriers which we have to cross. That's actually pulling us back. And sometimes I think now I started using the society, how they put me into back, like I try to use it as my merit. For example, when I'm shooting at places which is very controversial. For example, I was in Tamil Nadu coast, and it was when the sterilite agitation was on, and people used to come and say that yahan pe shoot nahi kar sakte, you can't shoot here. So I'm like, I just act that, oh, okay, I can't shoot here? Okay, let's pack up. We didn't know. So just being a woman, they think that, okay, I'll just pack up and go. And I use it as a way to counter it, They leave and I just shoot my film and come back. And I had an experience where a male filmmaker called me and asked me, how did you shoot in that coast? Because he shot in that coast, he was picked up by the same police, and he was asked to erase all the footage. So, so sometimes I feel that it's more privileged to be a woman filmmaker than my counterpart. Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part, I have, I think, gained a lot because of my gender, because I think it gives you access to many more spaces. I think people trust you a lot more, especially while talking to women and children. And a lot of my work has been around that, around education. And so they don't look at you with mistrust with, when a woman is going around with a camera. So I think that's really opened up a lot of spaces, and people also welcoming you into their homes at any time of the day or night. So I think that's been a huge, huge privilege. And but also I think that one is also viewed in these situations as the madam from the city. So I think that also immediately gives you an hierarchical this thing. So I'm not viewed as a woman so much, but as a madam. So in that sense, so I have actually never been challenged or I haven't actually faced any discrimination, believe it or not. So always, it's more like wonder that, oh, acha, she's working so hard, she's, picking up the tripod and the camera. And so it's more an awe that there's this woman doing all this work and handling everything. But I also realize, just in listening to other experiences, what Anandana, you were saying, is that a lot of my work involves, I, me, and myself. So in a sense, I don't actually have to be the leader or the boss. And maybe subconsciously, that's also one of the reasons I do all my all the work myself, because I'm just tired of having to explain something to somebody else and having to prove that I'm good enough, or that I have to be the leader. So I don't want to be, I'm like, filmmaking is not about that. So I just want to do my own thing, so that's also something which has kept me away from those situations. But the few interactions that I have actually had, even with editors or with even with students, there's an assumption that as a woman, you will certainly not be good technically. So and I myself keep undercutting myself. I keep thinking that I think this is how you do it, but I'm not sure. This is how I always express myself. I'm never able to say with utter confidence like men who have much lesser experience. So even with all my privilege, I still keep doubting myself that, oh, but I'm not technically good. Like even today I said the same thing, right? I said, I'm not technically good. I mean, I've shot like, 15 films, but I'll still say I'm not technically good. So constantly one is doing that, and it's just amazing, right? And so I remember a student trying to tell me how to, that, oh, but ma'am, this has, exposure aise set hota hai or something. I'm like, I do my own camera, I know how to set exposure. So it's just an assumption that, men know the technical stuff better. So I think that one faces all the time. But otherwise, in terms of, and also, I think there's also a way in which one can challenge people, the patriarchal setup and the people in power, if you ask very sort of direct and difficult questions, and then people become really wary. But what I usually do is that I ask really stupid sounding questions, okay, very ordinary questions, because I feel that in any situation, it is actually so blatant that any question you ask, the story behind it, the expression, the hesitation, all that will tell me what I want to know. So I don't have to ask direct questions about, that औरतें शोषित हैं या कुछ भी. ऐसा करने की ज़रूरत ही नहीं है, वो दिख जाता है. How people have, it's just so there. So in that sense, people also don't feel threatened. You say, हाँ ठीक है, वो education के बारे में कुछ पूछ रही है, उनको पूछने दो. So that's also a way in which, in fact, people reveal even more because they are not on their guard. So thanks.
Yeah, so everything that everybody said has been a part of my story too. What I would like to add is that I learned very early because I chose to do camera. At a time when cameras were 15 kgs, and I chose to go into a mainstream job, not an independent filmmaking job where you would do your own camera at your own convenience. But in an organization where the entire camera department was men who thought they were good at camera because they could do heavy lifting. And I came out to Jamia with that thing that मुझे तो filmmaking, मुझे तो ये करना ही नहीं है, मुझे तो वापस गाँव जाना है. So my first instinct was, what they tell me I can't do, I'm going to test that. So तुम कैमरा नहीं कर सकती हो, जो मुझे कैमरा ही करना है. And I took many interviews. I spoke to many filmmakers. Some women didn't take me. Some men were rude, and I didn't want to work with them. And then this organization called NDTV needed people immediately. And of course, I was interviewed by Pranoy Roy and Radhika Roy. And you know, one of the things that Seja, you said, I'm oblivious to how I'm seen. So I thought if I wear a shirt that is my father's size, I will look bigger than I am. And I went and I went for that interview wearing a shirt that was, the shoulders were falling off and thinking they're going to think I'm big enough to pick up a camera. Anyway, I got that job, and very quickly I learned that everything they tell you about what women cannot do is a lie. Literally everything. You know, and I said in my interview, I want to do both camera and editing. And they said, are you sure you can do it? I said, I don't know. But I did it. And after a while, I was doing camera 5 days a week and editing 5 days in the evening shift of the same days. I had the energy, I had the creative thing. I was learning faster than my individuals because there was work, and because I was, you know, I didn't believe what others thought about me. I just broke through. The other thing that happened, and I'm sure that's part of every woman's experience, is the presence of other women as role models. You know, we studied with Sabina Gaddyhook and Shoini Ghosh, and Sabina herself was a chit of a girl when she was teaching me. So there was no reason for me to believe that a chit of a girl like me cannot do what Sabina can do. And all these boys in my class with their abs and muscles, you know, they would do what Sabina asked them to do. When I started working, most of the young women reporters were women. They were fearless. Barkha Dutt, Radhika Bodia, Shutapa Deb, they wouldn't take no for an answer on the ground. And if they had political reporting ambitions, they were breaking those bastions. If they wanted to travel, they were going there. So I could see, that everything they've told you about what women can't do is literally a lie, because every day they are doing it, and they are doing it so well. And what I want to add is that one of the biggest learning experiences for me was going into training very quickly. We were in an organization where, which was very democratic. And any camera assistant who wanted to train to be a camera person was given the opportunity to do that. And none of the male camera people wanted to cooperate with this policy. I did. And the same, 6 feet tall camera assistant who was being told by my male colleagues, don't cooperate with her, she will spoil the equipment and you will get blamed, were discovering that ma'am is perfectly happy to teach me about how a camera works, and she's nice to me, so why should I not be nice to her? And then that took me to Bhilai. I went as a trainer for an access training course where there were tribals, there were women, there were Dalit students. And I was shivering, thinking that, they're going to see this. I always kind of began to see myself as a little girl, because I would enter rooms and they'd say, what a little girl like you doing with a big camera like that? And I thought, oh, I must be very small. I was 42 kgs myself. So I was shivering before I began to teach. But when you give something to others, when you have something to offer with humility, you discover that people open their hearts to you. And that's really been the compelling experience of filmmaking, that when you ask with humility, there will never be a time when you don't have a place to stay the night, when you don't have access to the next meal, when you don't have somebody to help you with your equipment and your tickets. And to that extent, I agree that, in my experience, being a woman on the field actually turned out to be an advantage.
Last question, ma'am, I would like to put that what does feminism mean to you as a filmmaker? Like, you have worked in so many films, you have worked with NDTV, and you have worked with women. What does feminism mean to you as a filmmaker?
To start with, it meant to me that I will not undercut myself, because we've all kind of grown up with the same training. So I will not believe what I am told about myself as, as the limits that a woman must adhere to. Then very quickly it became, I will listen to the women. Because every time you go to the field, the men will come forward and they will tell you the story, whichever story it is. And you know that there are women in the background, but they're not coming in. And as news crews, in a hurry, we would always kind of go, get the first thing in, first thing out. And we learned that there was a second layer and a third layer, find out, pay attention to the children, pay attention to the elderly, pay attention to the old women, and all the women behind those curtains, behind those walls, from those windows, who will come forward when the men want to treat you to a meal. So listening. And with time, all of these divisions, gender, caste, religion, they all become one. You realize that all this divisiveness, you cannot see it in silos. That if you are going to work for justice, if you want to understand justice, if you want to break through the shell of your own privilege and do something that is of value to another person, then you need to, while you are questioning patriarchy, you also need to question caste, you need to question divisiveness on the basis of religion and class and race.
Yeah, I think it's something that one takes so much for granted in everything one does, actually. And filmmaking is just an extension of that. But I think one thing that it makes you very conscious about is whatever topic you may be making a film on, I think you can't, at least I can't not be conscious of the gender aspect. Sometimes some other aspects might slip up, I might slip up on. But about gender, one is just so conscious and aware that, so it's like, like I made, my recent film was on, some teachers in a district in Dungarpur. And both the teachers I chose were men. And I couldn't find a woman teacher who could be one of my main characters. But if you see the film, the final film, of course the men are the main characters. But in terms of screen time, the mothers of the children, most of whom are girls, so somehow they all made their way into the film because my interest leads me to that. That's what, naturally I get drawn to. So overall, if you see there's probably more percentage of women in the film. So I think that's what, that's what the sensitization does, that you include, so I think that's you can't not see it. You can't be oblivious to it. Yeah.
One criticism I always get in every film screening is, आपकी film में पुरुष नहीं दिखते हैं. You don't see any men in your film. So I think it became like you look at primetime news, even for a farmers issue, farmers protest, you will have men talking about the issue. But what about the majority women farmers of India? Where are they? So sometimes through your art, through your medium, you feel that, it's okay. In my film, let there just be women, it's my film. It's how I want to do it. So sometimes you assert that, okay, here in this platform, I want like 26 minutes of film. Let me just hear what they have to say. So sometimes that really happens, and when I look back, what was I doing in the last 6 months was exactly the same thing. With Khabar-Area, we are really looking forward for a online rural journalism course, which we are really focusing about. My fellow panelists have said, we talk about class, gender. When we talk about cinema, we can't ignore these stark things which are right out there. So when we were designing this course, we are like, these are the things which we should teach any woman, any filmmaker who is coming forward: gender, class, caste, because it's very stark out there. And in the past, like 1 decade of experience, everywhere we go, we can't ignore that. And so yeah, that is my feminism, I would say.
To me, feminism is the critical part of the answer that the planet needs right now. So I think all this macho capitalism, casteism, has delivered us to the brink of disaster. And I am not even sure that Seher is going to, I want to make sure that Seher and the children coming after see a better future. And what is my contribution to it? So my contribution to it is to remember the strong shoulders of women that I am standing on. Women who had to wage big struggles just to get out of the house, or to remove the parda or the ghungat, or to do anything, to go to school. So I am standing on the shoulders of those women who waged very, very massive struggles. And it's my responsibility that those struggles are remembered. I behave responsibly towards them and carry it forward, not just for the women among us, but for the feminine in all the men. Because it is much more than women, that men need to change course. When I had my first child, it was a son. So I was, like all good feminists, I was depressed because I wanted a daughter. Yeah. And so I was told, madam, it is men who need to be brought up better. It is men who are bringing danger and threat and disorder and crime to this world. So please raise a better man. And that is the feminist in me, to raise better men, all of you.
That's wonderful, ma'am. That's very well said.
Yeah, I think for me, feminism would be all of the above. But it also, I think, at the end of the day, is to have patience with another woman who may dress, think, and act differently from you, because we have to wait for the end choices to play out. And I think that that is what we need today. Feminism is a lot of patience. It's critical listening. It's obviously finding allies across gender. And at the end of the day, I think for me, it is the natural way of trying to find justice. Because I think you don't have to be a woman to be a feminist. You don't have to be feminine to a certain degree to be a feminist. At the end of the day, if you are seeking justice, and if you're willing to sort of say that I will listen, debate, and stand when it gets difficult, then you're a feminist. And yeah, so I think for me, that's how it is. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us today.